All right, so you were on two.
I received a telegram to report.
Had you already been married? Did you at least get married before you got the telegram?
Yes, yes. Because I was going to go back to Tuskegee, but I my destination had been changed, and I home to report to Godman Field, Kentucky, which is on Fort Knox in Louisville, Kentucky.
Did you know why you were reporting there?
Yes, yes. I was informed that they were. That's where the 477th Medium Bomb Group would be formed.
So then you went directly to Kentucky from Hartford?
Yes, but I took a wife with me.
Oh, she went with you? That would be fun.
Oh yeah, and in fact, I bought a car, my first car, a Buick Roadmaster, and I was going to drive back, but the time was too short then. I couldn't arrange everything to get, and then drive across country to get. I would have been in trouble before I got started because I wouldn't have been able to report on time. So I left the car here, and later, when the summer came around, during that coming summer, my dad and a friend of his, Mr. Melvin Jones, brought the car out. They drove out, leisurely drove out. They had a little vacation and brought it out to me.
Oh, how nice. All right, so what did you do when you got to Kentucky?
They were forming the 477. That's when I joined the 616 Squadron. Which was one of the squadrons in the 477th Bomb Group, and that's when we practiced overseas during overseas training. In fact, which usually happens, several of the fellows lost their lives doing that.
In the practice?
Yes, well, that was practicing to. You lost your life practicing to destroy, huh?
Yeah. Where would you fly to practice? You didn't actually.
All over. You could fly anywhere. And at that point in the States, your flights were planned separately. You weren't. It wasn't like. The crew of one particular aircraft would be allowed to practice, and I'm certain it was coordinated from the fellows who were running things, different types of flights, different types of bombing. Different maneuvers and whatnot. So it was really overseas practicing, overseas training.
Did you practice in formation, or did you go one by one?
Both individual aircraft and formation. It was. We had to practice everything, whatever we were going to run into.
So how long did you stay there?
Well, we didn't stay too long because it was found that Godman Field was inadequate for a medium bomb group.
Why? Was it too small?
Too small, yeah. So we were to be sent to Freedman Field, and I was one of the 101 African American officers who was sent to Freedman Field to prepare to receive the whole group.
Where was Friedman Field?
Indiana.
So 101 of you went ahead of time to get ready?
Yes.
What did you do?
Here we go. Our first day there, after hours, 4 of the fellows decided to stop at the Officers Club for some refreshments. They were refused service by the bartender. One of the fellows was a captain. He ordered the bartender who was a sergeant to serve. Whereupon the bartender did serve, but he broke the glasses after they finished with their drinks. It came back to our area, and I say our area because here again, I have to remember that it was total segregation. We were in a separate area from other white soldiers. I should say from white soldiers, not other white soldiers. And it was decided, the word got around, you know, to fellas, that we would not go down there in droves. We didn't want any kind of resurrection. We wouldn't attempt to go into the Officers Club no more than 6 at a time. Well, I think 5 fellas decided to go then. And when I got there, the club was, the provost marshal was at the front door with several MPs and whatnot. And he said they were not allowed to come in. Well, some of the officers that had gone outranked the provost marshal, but the provost marshal still had his, you know, had his authority. But they pushed by him and went in and ordered drinks. They were served, but of course the same thing happened. The glasses were broken after they finished. When they left, a group of 4 fellows attempted to go, and by that time, Colonel Selway, who was our interim commander, who was waiting for, who was a white Southerner actually, he was a colonel, a West Point man though. He was our interim commander. We were waiting for General Benjamin, well, he was a colonel then, Colonel Benjamin Davis, to come back from overseas to take over the 477th. And the 477th would have been the first bomb group. It would be a composite group. It would have its own fighter cover. None of the bomb groups for the USA had their own fighter cover, and I don't think that any of the countries, both for either side, had composite groups. But this was strictly because it was it would be a black bomb group. Well, he ordered us under arrest in quarters, and the club was closed when the next group attempted to go.
Well, were you in that group that?
No, no. I never knew where the Officers Club was. I wasn't the only one. Most of the fellas didn't know where the Officers Club, and I didn't have any interest in the Officers Club. I had to leave my bride in Louisville, Kentucky, because even though we had been flying out of Godman Field, and there were quarters on Godman Field for officers and their families. They would not rent them to African American officers, and neither would they at Freedman Field. We knew that, and so that all the fellows that were married, they had to leave their wives there. Well, my wife and I were just married. A couple of months. My interest was trying to get to know my wife. I wanted to get back. Officers Club meant nothing to me. That was the last thing that was on my mind. Or either find a way to get her there, but I would have to have time to go out. Because black folks around military establishments that had the room would offer their rooms to officers to rent, because they knew that they couldn't rent the quarters on post. So my interest was to get back to Barbara, or to have Barbara come to me, but I couldn't bring her to Freedman Field until I found a place for her to stay. So, Colonel Selway ordered us under arrest in quarters. The next day, we were ordered to appear before a military tribunal. When we appeared before that tribunal, and I have all this, the documents there that I will show you later. We were there was a panel, military men, all of them high-ranking military men, from general on down.
Were they all white?
Oh yes, of course. We were, the order was read to us that Colonel Selway had put together, and that his commander, who was General Hunter, had approved, that he ordered us to sign. That, which I have a copy of, was tantamount to our agreeing to segregate ourselves. Oh, we said no. Knowing full well what the outcome could be, because we all had been cadets at one time, and we had to study the Articles of War, particularly pertaining to a commissioned officer. And then in the Articles of War, there's a section that reads, if as a commissioned officer you refuse, ignore, or disobey a direct order from your commanding officer during a time of war, you can and will be shot, and there is no appeal. Well, we knew that. But the fellows that said, hey, we can go overseas and die, we might as well die here for what we know is right. Well, when we refused, the next day we were loaded at the C-47s, which was the standard military cargo aircraft at that time. And we were flown back to Godman Field and put into stockades. The stockade consisted of a 7-foot barbed wire fence with, and they had lights set up that turned night into day, really turned night into day, and it was patrolled by the white Southern troops who had been issued submachine guns, Thompson submachine guns with live ammunition, and it was very apparent that there were some who were looking for any excuse to use them. Well, while we were there waiting, they were holding us there for general court-martial.
Your
And
whole bomb group got sent there?
Yeah,
And locked up?
the 101 officers.
And you got back to your bride anyway.
No, I didn't.
She couldn't come visit you?
Of course not. No. We were in the stockade behind the barbed wire fence.
Some job of preparing you guys did out in Indiana.
Well, we woke up one morning, and several of the fellows had radios, and on the radio we found that President Roosevelt had passed away, and the Vice President, Mr. Harry S. Truman, was now president, and telling the folks about who Truman was, it was also stated he was from Missouri. He said, "Oh, well, we're all dead. They're going to shoot us for sure now. That's a Southern white man there." But I wasn't there, naturally. But from what I was told, that when President Truman learned of our situation, as Commander-in-Chief, his orders were, turn my boys loose and let them go do what they were trained to do. Whereupon we had a big laugh, because we said, hey, we're still not men. He said, turn my boys loose, but at least they're not going to shoot us. But that's, they released us, but we never did get back to Freedman Field. I selected another field for us.
Where did you go then after that?
I didn't get to the other field, whatever it was.
Oh.
I had requested, while we were still at Godman Field, to be allowed to go back to Tuskegee for pilot training. The same Colonel Selway, refused my request because I had been part of that 101. We were ordered to and sent to Walterboro, South Carolina. Our job there was to patrol the coast because German U-boats had been sighted, and also they had found equipment and items that U-boat sailors, German U-boat sailors, had come ashore and left, and I think it was done purposely so that in an attempt to frighten the American people, to let them know that they could get here, they could get to you. Well, part of our job was to patrol the coast in our aircraft, and to search or look for and destroy, if possible, any German U-boats.
What aircraft were you flying at that time? What kind of plane?
That's a B-25Js.
So that's what you were still flying?
Yep. Well, that was to be our permanent aircraft, the B-25Js. During that period of time, because even though Colonel Selway had refused my request to go back to Tuskegee for pilot training, but while flying out of Walterboro, I received orders one day to go back to Tuskegee. I had been for pilot training. And of course, I went back.
Well, that
And I went into, well, I was in class 46D of pilot training. That was the last class of pilot training at Tuskegee. I soloed which was actually the high point of my military life. As it was on a Sunday morning, and I can remember it like it was yesterday when Mr. Thomas, who had been my instructor, we had taken off. I thought we were just going on the usual training, and he came back. He said, he told me to, okay, he said, take her back and sit her down. So we went back to the field and landed. He said, okay, she's yours, you take her up. And I was elated. I said, oh, he turned me loose. And when I got up, I wasn't supposed to go any higher than 5,000 feet. And he told me what pattern to use and whatnot. But when I got up there and I looked down, it was really a high point in my life up at that point. Everything looked so clean. The sun was shining. I forgot about the war going, really. And I had read somewhere someone flying and that they felt they could reach out and touch the face of God, and that's the way I felt. I really, really, truly felt that. The Maker's got to be somewhere close around here, because just the feeling that you got. And many things ran through my head. I said, well, Connie, you made it, boy. I call myself a boy then. And then it dawned on me, says, hey, you're up here, now you gotta sit her down. And takeoff and landing, those are the areas where it's easy to run into trouble. And I set her down, and she didn't bounce when I came back in. And she sat down, and I sat back and said, Connie, no one could ever have told you that you would feel like this. It was a wonderful feeling, really. And of course, we went on to training, and then I was sent to my basic training. But I have always attempted to get across when I could. It was total segregation, but even though there were very few black individuals who had a pilot's license in those days, and by the way, the first black person to have a pilot's license in the States was a black woman who had gone to France to learn to fly, and she did, and she came back, Bessie Coleman. And she set up a school in Chicago. And there were several other fellows who got their wings, but we were taught by the few black flyers in primary, because the government never had a primary school in those days, and that's where you learn to handle an aircraft. And none of the white schools would teach black fellas to fly. So it was Chief Anderson, who was a flight instructor for Tuskegee Institute, had taught himself to fly. He saved money and bought an aircraft, then he taught himself to fly. A lot of the fellows in those days did. That's the only way they could learn to fly.
Were all your instructors black
Oh yeah.
instructors?
In primary, yep. That's one thing I point out. Black men taught black men to fly in the military. We didn't have a white instructor until, for a short period of time, and it was very unusual, until I was in basic training. But he didn't, I don't know, he disappeared very quick. But because when I got there was the last class, fellows, black flyers who had been overseas were coming back, and so that they could maintain that segregation thing, and your instructors were black,
Right, so
which
now
was fine.
Yeah, you're getting trained as a pilot now, so you're learning different skills and you're actually flying. So where did you go? Did you get your wings? Is that what you get when you get?
No, that's, I have to finish the story. That was the last class. The war ended, and since the Tuskegee training was an experiment, and I might say, and very truthfully say, that experiment was designed to be a failure, but the fellows did not allow it to fail. Instead of allowing the class to go through and complete, whoever was there, they cut it, boom. Because even though it was in the works to desegregate the military, in fact, a few years later, President Truman again did something you wouldn't think a Southerner would do, at least as a black man, you wouldn't think a Southerner would do. He signed orders desegregating the military. It was, in my opinion, and most people I speak with, a horrendous thing to do. Of course, now it's 60 some odd years ago. It doesn't mean too much. But instead of just chopping it off, the thing that should have been done was that, okay, no, you don't accept any more in the Tuskegee program, but what's there should go ahead and finish. But they didn't allow it.
So that was the end of your air career?
Well, no, I was still an officer, and I was still a bomber and navigator. I was given the choice of staying in or getting out. I opted to get out because I had really decided I probably should get out anyway, because remember, I only had a high school education, and now I had a family because my wife had become pregnant. And I said, Connie, you better get an education to try to take care of what you have started. and so I opted to leave, and which I did, and I studied architecture, and at the Hartford Architectural and Engineering Institute which is no longer in existence, that I attended, when I had my first interview with the Dean of Admissions, he very frankly told me, after doing our the course of our conversation, he said he would advise me not to try to become an architect. I said, why? He said, your people can't afford one. So I said, well, you know, maybe if I was a young freshman, you could sway me. I said, however, if I'm good enough, you'll hire me and pay me my fee. So he looked at me and smiled and said, okay, okay. But you know, he did have a point. It was still a little struggle, but I enjoyed it. I figured what I've been able to come through is nothing. Then where my life was on the line, and now this, hey.
Did you go through architect school on the GI Bill?
I'm sorry?
Did you go through architect school on the GI Bill?
Oh yeah, definitely. Sarita, could we stop once more?
Connie, I want to ask you a couple questions about daily life in the service. How did you stay in touch with your family when you were in the service?
Mostly by a letter for him.
What was the food like?
Oh, we ate well, because most of the fellows who were ground crew yeah, I guess you would call it ground crew, used to raise sand at us because you were flying at different times and whatnot, and you could always go into the dining room and order what you wanted to eat, no matter what the cook had. And they said, "Oh, you prima donnas!" But the food was very good.
Did you always have enough supplies and materials of all the things you needed?
Oh yes, we did. But the boys that went over in Europe, from the stories I get from them, and I become very friendly with most of them, didn't always. Which brings into light something else that I hope is not overlooked: the ground crew that kept the fellows flying. Some of those crew chiefs, when they were not getting supplies and replacement parts for aircraft, made parts. I don't know how on earth they did, but they were determined to keep Tuskegee Airmen flying. So those fellows who may not have won I guess, glamorous wings on the chest should get, both male and female should get more credit than they've been getting, really, where most of the attention is paid to fellows who was able to wear the wings. They could only wear the wings because there were folks behind them that was seeing to things being taken care of properly.
Speaking of the wings, and I know we talked about this off camera, were you awarded any medals or citations?
No. No, yeah, well, yes, there were some, but I don't know what the heck they were.
Well, and I understand.
I mean, this was, but not, see, I didn't go overseas like only 450 Tuskegee Airmen went overseas.
Those 450 made themselves pretty famous.
That's right, that's right.
Well, I understand that there's an award or a medal that you're supposed to be getting now. The Congressional Gold Medal.
That's right.
So, there's that one.
Well, until we get it, I can't claim it.
Yeah. What did you do for entertainment?
I didn't do too much. Part of my life story that I left out. See, I was a musician. At 14, I was a professional musician because I was being paid for making music. And my instrument, I had Dad send my instrument to me, and for my own benefit mostly. Sometimes, which we had a little combo also in Wellers and cadets. Have fun playing my instrument. Then when I married anyone that's first married, particularly a man, he will totally back me up that getting to know your wife, you got plenty of entertainment, fella. You
don't need any other entertainment.
That's right.
What instrument did you play?
Oh, I preferred the guitar. I had electric guitar. I had taken also, I started out on the sax, alto sax, but I liked the guitar, and I was fortunate enough to set in with have some jam sessions with some of the renowned musicians of our day, some of the big bands. I hesitate to call names because you can get into trouble, you know. But some of your biggest bands I was able to sit in with.
Wow. What did you think of officers, and what did you think of your fellow soldiers?
Well, I have to repeat what I said. I have total respect for except for one, which is not bad. Officers that I ran into that outranked me, and for soldiers as well, I had some incidents that could have really turned into horrible affairs. Example, when we were in Godman Field, before Dad brought the car out to me, there was my wife had wanted to go to a movie to see some movie, but in the meantime, she was supposed to go to the field with me. I lived off the field with her. I had to be there, at the proper time. So in returning, she came out with me, which was in the wee hours in the morning, and we were going to leave the field and go to the theater. The only transportation was a bus, and it was usually a military bus, military field. And when we walked up, the line had already formed, which wasn't unusual, and there were 3 black girls who was first in line. A soldier who was a sergeant. I saw him when he was coming in, paying attention to him. He happened to be a white soldier, and he walked by us, and he had a young lady with him. And he put his arm up and moved the black girls aside and put her in front. And I said, no, I can't accept that. So I went over to him, I challenged him, I said, Sergeant, you'll have to move the young lady that you put there. These young ladies were in front. I said, I'm, as you can see, an officer. And I said, I wouldn't go and jump in front of them. Well, he challenged that. And I noticed he had been overseas, he had all kinds of ribbons. He had a presidential citation. But I told him, I said, look, either you remove her, I will insist on the MPs incarcerating her, one or the other. Well, it was not uncommon for white soldiers to refuse to salute a black officer in those days, you see. And I knew it could open up Pandora's box. But MP, I called an MP over, and I told him what my orders were, and he moved the girl. A girl, I call the young lady.
Right.
But that's just an example of so many little incidents that could blossom into big horror stories and whatnot. But I'm a crazy guy. I have always been able to blot out things that are nasty. And so often when I'm asked questions, I don't give a full answer about happenings back then. It's part of it is I really don't remember it. I could remember if I tried hard enough. I still have the memory blanks, they just turn over slower. But a lot of times I'm embarrassed. Not for me, I'm embarrassed for my country. I'm embarrassed for particularly white friends that I have that know what I am. I really am. So I'm trying to find out, where were we now?
So Connie, you were always in a segregated unit, and as a black officer, did you have black soldiers that you were in charge of underneath you?
Oh yeah.
How do you think your soldiers looked at you as an officer?
I think they were very proud of me. because I knew what they were up against, because I knew what I was up against. And I knew what other black soldiers and officers were up against. And at the same time, however, it was important that we took care of business properly. And I learned that was reinforced from observing, because I was a young fellow then in those days. May not look it, but I was, when observing fellows who were older than I, looking at some of those giants that I've mentioned, and of course one was the colonel who became a general, General Davis himself. He was an unbelievable man. He had withstood the horror of the silent treatment at West Point from the time he entered until he graduated. And not to have anyone, even your classmates, talk to you, it's unbelievable. A man that's able to withstand that. But he could socialize with you, have a big ball with you. But when it was time to go back to war, you had to soldier for him. There was no mucking around. There was no buddy deal. Everybody had to soldier, and I don't think everyone is able to do that in that manner. He demanded respect, and you respected him, but you didn't respect him because he demanded respect. You respected him because he was due respect, because of his own. So I just learned from fellows who were head and shoulders above me. And that's.
Did you make any close friendships with fellow officers in the...
Oh, yes. Are you kidding? I never had any brothers until but the horror is, Ed Hall is gone. We were brother-in-laws. Charlie Malone, who was one of my real best buddies, all the way through we were together, he's gone. Eddie Dixon, he's gone. Lem Custis and I became extremely good friends, although Lem was a bit older and he was, as I said, the first black policeman. He's gone. And I still have some buddies that are walking around, but there are very few that was in service with me.
Did you stay in touch after the war?
Oh, yes. We have...
Reunion?
We have a closeness, I should say, and every once in a while we get together. Well, Tuskegee Airmen Inc. has a reunion every year in different parts of the country.
Do you still go?
Oh yes, there was supposed to. The last one was in Orlando last year, and that was supposed to be the last one. My son, who lives in Florida, was very upset because I didn't get down to it, but things happened and I couldn't get to it. But then he was all smiles again when he found out that the fellows decided to have more reunions.
Oh,
So, because I haven't, see, when I got out of service and I went into practice, I had to devote my time to the practice to attempt to make it a success and to raise my family the way or at least as close as I could to the manner that I wanted to raise them. And I couldn't make all of them. I did make some, thank goodness. And in fact, whenever I made them, my wife went with me because she was with me moving around the States, so she knew many of the fellows and their wives anyway, so it was, that was quite pleasant. I almost, let me say right here, I didn't throw my time away devoting it to trying to make a living, proper living for the family and whatnot, because there are, my youngsters have better than 10 degrees, which amongst them, which I guess I don't have to tell you, which I'm very proud of. I'm proud, but sometimes I laugh at myself about being a Tuskegee Airman, but I am truly proud of our youngsters. They're tremendous people.
well, they had good role models.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you think so?
I think so.
Well, yeah, sometimes I guess, but that's my pride and joy, my youngsters and my grandson.
Connie, how would you say that your military experience affected your life?
Well, I would say it fortified my thinking and the respecting other people, both male and female. I have a saying that dimensions do not, how to measure the, how to, now I'm trying to, haven't used it in so long, dimension the height of a man. I can't even recall. I am getting old. I am getting old.
Connie, I'm gonna...
Dimensions don't give you, oh, is that on?
No, I've got a couple minutes, but it's gonna run out in a few minutes. Is there anything about your military experience that I haven't asked you that you would like recorded?
No, I don't think so. Oh, well, yes, there's one thing that just popped into mind. While I was a cadet, because I don't like to show negativeness totally on one side, because I was fortified by a white major. I had a 2 weeks delay en route when I was going back to Hartford. Mainly, I wanted my family to see me as a cadet, and I had to change trains in New York, or train stations. I had to go to Grand Central to come up to Connecticut. I had a while to wait for my train, so I went outside and was just standing around. I was doing the summer looking around, and a couple of MPs came up to me and said, "What army are you with, soldier?" Well, the cadet uniforms, the uniform and the cap was a little different. So I looked at him, I laughed, I said, "I'm from the same one you are." So he says, "Where are your papers?" My papers letting me off and running the way I was. So I said, I'm a cadet. I said, I'm on my honor, which is true. And which they challenged. I gave my name and my where I was stationed, which was Tuskegee, because I was as a flight cadet. I had to be, and being black, I had to come from Tuskegee. But they were giving me a hard time. So Major came out of the door. I saw him out of the corner of my eyes, and he had stopped and listened. After a while, he came over. He says, "Are you having a problem, mister?" So I said, "I think so, sir, a little." I said, "I don't understand that I don't have leave papers. I'm as a cadet." So he raised sand with them. The MPs were white, but this was a white major also. And he got me off the hook without me going through a whole lot of unnecessary, because I would have to get in touch with someone at Tuskegee of authority and whatnot, and you didn't have cell phones in those days to do it.
Well, Connie, when you were in the Tuskegee Airmen, you were still in the service, had their fame started to spread to the rest of the military? Because by now,
No.
the fame over in Europe.
No.
I mean,
Absolutely not.
But back in the United States, they didn't know what was.
No. Tuskegee Airmen were, shall I say, can't say appreciated, but were recognized as good soldiers, good performers by the enemy before by most of our country. They they weren't actually any more than any soldier is afraid of Tuskegee Airmen, but they respected them with Tuskegee Airmen before we were respected here. Eventually the white bomber crews were requesting for Tuskegee Airmen to escort them, where originally they didn't want a part of a black flyer. They felt that black flyers would be would not be black; they would be yellow. But that changed quick.
Connie, you certainly lived in historic times and were one of the men making history. I'm going to run out of tape if I haven't already, so I want to publicly thank you for your service and for your opportunity.
I'm just one of those guys that was born in that particular time, that's all. I'm not unique, so don't try to make me look unique. I'm just another guy that was doing his job, really. This is my country. It was in trouble. and that's my true feeling.
Well, I want to thank you for your service and for your time.